At this time, I think we're just about on schedule, and we're going to move into the next section of our agenda today. It is critically important that we have everyone's full attention and participation and engagement. As here at Malcolm X College, we are preparing to be the best in class with health sciences education at the core, along with instruction and adult education of what we do. And in order to accomplish that, we need to make sure that not only do we have the best facilities, and that, as you can tell, is on its way, on schedule, on budget, but that we have a talented workforce of faculty, staff, and students that truly understand what it is that we are charged to do. And in that vein, our culture, our decision-making processes, our norms, our thought processes all come into play. And at this time, we have the opportunity to spend the next couple, 3 and more hours really delving into the discussions around culture. Critically important, because we can build all the fancy facilities we want, we can buy all the expensive equipment that we want, but if our culture, if our acceptance of change, if our attitudes, if our thoughts, our beliefs are not where they need to be, all is for naught. And we are here to support educational journeys, such as those that are experienced by the 2 students that just delivered a phenomenal presentation on Ebola. So without further ado, I invite you to pay very close attention to Dr. Christopher Ann Easley, who will facilitate the remainder of the college-wide meeting today. Thank you. Dr. Easley.
Again, good morning. As Dr. Monroe has said, we have a very long day, and lunch will be provided. So, you're welcome. There are a lot of things a lot of initiatives that are going on that are very exciting. We have our health sciences consolidation, our nursing consolidation, and we're getting ready to embark upon our HLC self-study, which means that we collectively will be engaged in assessing where we stand compared and contrasted to where we were 10 years ago for the purpose of reaccreditation. In addition, there are a number of specialized accrediting self-studies being done, with visits coming up next year and into the following year. So what does all that mean? I'm going to read something to you. I mentioned it, I referenced it at the last college-wide, but I'm going to read it, and I'm citing, or I'm quoting from Matthew, that's okay, Matthew 9:16-17, Luke 5:36-39. No man also seweth a piece of new cloth on an old garment, else the new piece that filled it up take it away from the old, and the rent is made worse. Verse 22, and no man putteth new wine into old bottles, else the new wine doth burst the bottles, and the wine is spilled. And the bottles will be marred, but the new wine must be put into new bottles. So what does that mean for us? We've got a lot of good things going on. And there's phenomenal people here. I've been here 3 months, and every day I continue to meet new people who excite me, who are very dedicated to the students and are very dedicated to the education process. But at the same time, we have some things we have to work on. There are people that have talked quite a bit about feeling disengaged, disenfranchised from collective conversations, not a part of. Yesterday, I had the pleasure, we kicked off student focus groups, and that was, the first one was sponsored by the SGA. And one of the things I think has been very important, it's a very important perspective for me, is that we have to hear the voices of our students. We have to understand where they are. We have to understand where you are. We have to understand where the faculty are, where the staff lies. The students, while they talked about good things about Malcolm X, they also talked about sometimes not feeling connected to the faculty in the classroom. So we've begun conversations across the college. About 2 weeks ago, is it Dean Owsley? I'm losing track of days and times now. I spent the whole day with the nursing faculty doing a very similar process to this one. Because what's important is that we're bringing together 4 different colleges to form the new Chicago City College's nursing program, and which will be one of, if not the largest nursing program in the state of Illinois. But what does that mean? We're bringing 4 different cultures, people who are used to 4 different leadership styles, 4 different types of norms and values. So we spent that day having a conversation around what are really the core values that bind the people in that room together. And we had the opportunity to follow, like I said, the process similar to the one that we're doing today, where people began to understand that there was far more commonality than they had thought versus difference. So how do we begin to build a culture that is developed around that commonality and brand how we want our students to be viewed by the external workforce that they walk into, by our external community partners, by us internally. It was an exciting day. We, and one session, and I want to say because one session today is not the end of it. I've received the notes a couple of days ago. I'm going to shoot those notes back out to the nursing staff, nursing faculty, and request a team that will be responsible for executing what the implementation strategies now will be around developing that culture of commonality. It's an ongoing process. Change is not just a one point in time. It's something that we have to continuously engage in, but there has to be a starting point. Today is our starting point here for Malcolm X College, and we had a conversation a couple of days ago about at what point do we invite our new family members into the conversation about change. Because we will be, as part of the consolidation and moving to the new building, embracing people coming in from the programs that are consolidating to ours. However, I think the consensus was around this conversation was that we needed to start here first before we invite our incoming family members into the change process. With the health sciences consolidation, and equally important, about 3 weeks ago, to the academic task force, I invited faculty to partake in our meetings to really begin the dialogue about how do we come together, faculty and staff. And we've had 3 meetings around those conversations. Unfortunately, the time frame was not good for all faculty. So Byron sent out a survey to request what times would be conducive. And it was kind of equally split across each time frame. But as part of our implementation steps, we will be utilizing those times for people to come together to be able to take us into an implementation phase. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a backdrop. Now, how does all of this tie into our accreditation? Who can tell me why did I quote Matthew and Luke as it pertains to our accreditation? Any ideas? Yes, ma'am.
It's so funny you mentioned that scripture. I quoted that scripture in my class, in math class. How does that relate to math? But basically what that scripture was basically saying was we're trying to create a new Malcolm X. And in the culture that we have now, this is an old culture surrounded by the values that we know now. And what we're going into is something brand new, something that's going to include things we haven't had before. So we have to somehow change the culture so that we can fit what is coming next. And kind of like in my class when we find common denominators. You can't put the old numerator on top of the new denominator.
Yes.
You can't. You can't put new wine into old wineskins. It's not going to work. So that's basically what I got from it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Absolutely on target. And a part of looking at what that change really means is also visioning how we take ourselves to the next level, which is really going to be important. Now, I asked Byron Javier to put together an encapsulated view of the slides we've been sharing recently about the HLC accreditation and what that means. And in a second, I'm going to turn it over to Byron to kind of walk through, because I think it's important that you understand that many of the things that we were cited on 10 years ago prevail now. And, you know, I said before, the measure of insanity is doing what? Same thing over again and expecting different results. It's not going to happen. We can move into that new building. We can have all the beautiful, updated, state-of-the-art equipment. But if we aren't accredited, we got issues. There are some good things that we've done. And there's some good things we're doing now. I mean, we're taking what we're calling deep dive looks at our programs across the board and designing change around that. But that just can't be one group. When we fully engage self-study, which is coming up like immediately, that we all buy in, believe in, engage in. It's not just one group. And we have to, at the same time, look at our culture. And what are the things behaviorally that we need to be very diagnostic about, that we have to change in order to be able to make the changes and successfully take ourselves to that next level. Some of the conversations have bottom line kinds of things. How do we embrace one another?
Almost 10 years ago, The process of accreditation started at Malcolm X. And I recognized several faces during that time. And probably you're going to recognize some faces too. People who were engaged in that self-study. So all that work paid off. November 7th, the 5th to the 7th, we had the team from the HLC visiting, and after reviewing, meeting with faculty, staff, students, they decided that we were going to receive 10 years reaccreditation. That was great, right? They thought that we were doing a lot of great things, and we continue with that trend. There were some concerns. Do you remember the concerns? Assessment. Anything else? Accreditation of some of the. Well, let's look criterion by criterion, right? So the criterion one, they said, well, you're okay. No concerns here. Criterion 2, they say, you're okay here too. But then, in terms of student learning, they mentioned one. Some of our programs are failing, they said, or going to. Or they're being challenged. I remember a PA at the moment. We didn't, I will say that we didn't pay a lot of attention, but we had the concern. Another concern. Some things remain the same, right? After 10 years, seems like we're still struggling with our programs. More concerns. And of course, here we have an assessment, right? So we were able to avoid that bullet when we started the Academy of Assessment, remember? That was a good play, I think, at that time, deciding to go into the Academy, not to be cited. But what's going to happen now? More concerns. Students complain about the cafeteria, the quality of food, pricing, bookstore, financial aid, elevator access, and some other things. Online courses, online training, and again, assessment. Criterion 5, no concerns. So that's, those were the findings at that time. What do you think is going to happen if they come next week? What is what they're going to find? If you're part of the accrediting body, what is your reaction? What are you going to say? Now, with the new process, we still have the 5 criteria. We talk about that. But these are actually expectations. How effective the college has been regarding the previous concerns. I will not show them the same. And there is a list of expectations that we have to be able to provide evidence that we are actually doing something about that. And there's definite guiding values, and the HLC will be looking at that. Okay. And I'm placing all these questions as we engage in the conversation. You have to, in your table, when you're meeting, think about guiding values, the expectations. Because what we're trying to do is, okay, we're going to look at our past, our present, but we also have to look at our future, right? And as we prepare our future, we need to answer these questions. And we go back to our mission. What evidence do we have that we are fulfilling our mission? And how about effective teaching? And I'm sure we have a lot of evidence. I know that a lot of good things happen in the classroom. And we need to bring, that's what we need faculty to engage, because you are the ones in the classroom and you know what's going on. Just like we saw this morning with the students. That's the kind of engagement faculty has with students. We need to show that. And not only in the hard sciences. I know that we have in other areas too. So it's very important to show that. And this is basically the context for you as we engage in the whole culture discussion. And I hope this reflection helps to put in perspective what we need to do, okay? If you have any questions. Before we move into questions, before we move into movie time, comments? Yes, sir.
Good morning, Byron. I just had a quick question for a faculty member who's never been through this type of process before, particularly pertaining to the last area of demonstrating learning outcomes and teaching effectiveness. What does that mean for individual faculty? Does that mean that we would be submitting syllabi for review, or how do we build a comprehensive case, I guess?
I think that's a great question when we put it in perspective. Remember the mission? The mission talks about Malcolm X being an assessment-driven institution. So we show effective teaching through assessment. When we assess what our students are learning, when we decide that the students actually learn something in the classroom. And when we do that, we have the evidence. Otherwise, it's just gossip, right? Or just anecdotal evidence. So, yeah, my students are good, but you don't have any evidence. So that's when, and I think we need to put more work on developing a strong assessment plan where we engage our new faculty. Because we expect new faculty to come and know about assessment, but we are not providing that support. Or limited support. So I think that would be the answer for me. Carlina? Okay. Come on.
Hello. I just had a quick question. I remember when we went through the process and assessment centered, that phrase, assessment centered, was a major, I guess it was a turning point for this college in terms of whether or not we were doing that in the past and how would we do it in the future. And I see it as another problem in the future if we continue to make that a part of our mission statement. That doesn't mean we cannot do assessment. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't have a systematic way to assess our students. But I'm really concerned if we keep that phrase in our mission statement, we're going to be held to that just like we were held to it in the first accreditation process.
There's some realities in academia right now that we're not going to get around, because it has become the future, not just for the Higher Learning Commission, but for all of the accrediting bodies. In fact, so much that many states are beginning to align their state funding to the construct of assessment. Because the problem is, when you look at where our U.S. students pace against our international colleagues, in many areas, particularly in the STEM areas, we are behind them considerably. And it doesn't matter whether or not you're health sciences, business. When I left Governor State, we were going through the same process. You have to be able to show that when you step into the classroom, how is what you're delivering being internalized, and the students are really being able to demonstrate that they have learned what it is that you're teaching. But unless we can show a mapping process of what our deliverables are in the class and our learning outcomes are to the assignments, and then show that the students have in fact actually learned through a demonstrative process of assessment, then we're not meeting the standards of 90% of the accrediting agencies, because they want to be able to have the evidence to show. And as I've looked at some of the syllabi, as we've talked, met with some of the programs, some are strong in that and some are not. But that mapping process is something that we cannot get around. Now, I'm not going to say whether or not, and my comment is not addressed to whether or not it should be in the mission. I'm not even going in that direction. But what I'm just trying to give you is a global state of assessment and accreditation and its relationship in today's environment. Because if you look at, you know, community colleges, for example, across the United States, the retention rates, the ability of students to be able to show what they've learned in the classroom is not where it needs to be. That's why, truthfully, our reinvention strategies excite me, because we're actually setting the benchmark of change. Now, it's a process that we're working ourselves through, but we're ahead of the curve of a lot of community colleges, and quite frankly, ahead of the curve of a lot of state institutions, four-year institutions as well. We're not going to get around assessment. And if we cannot show that we are in the process of continuing that culture of assessment here, that is something that the Higher Learning Commission will definitely come in and cite us for. There's not even a question mark about that. I think the thing that we also have to do is really understand, and this is why the whole culture conversation is important. What have we done? Now, I've only been here 3 months, so I'm not going to say what we haven't done, but I can say what I think we need to do. We need to, we had a conversation at the academic task force where the faculty were present about the curriculum committee. And I made some comments, and George came back and said, well, now, VP, you know, the curriculum committee, we've put through X amount of programs and changed courses, approved courses. And I'm like, George, I hear you. I know that. That's evident by the program changes that we've done. But when we look at what curriculum committees' best practices are also now doing, they're not just approving courses. or approving programs. They're evaluating the currency of the curriculum. Is it relevant to today's environment? What are we doing with regards to challenging how we're structuring learning outcomes, how we're structuring the relationship of what's done in curricula design to assessment? Has our assessment committee been meeting on a routinized basis? Are the curriculum committees and the assessment committee having a conversation? How are we going to take it to the next level? So those are the things that I think moving towards a higher standard, and I'm not denouncing the standard where we've been, but taking it to a higher standard. You know, one of the things I've tasked Dr. Dewan with is instructional design, to really inculcate that into professional development for our faculty and adjuncts. We don't have time to come to meetings all the time, but how do we begin to look at, for example, with adult ed, looking at what the pedagogical strategies are for teaching adults? And in fact, some of the research that soon-to-be Dr. Essian has done with active learning really challenges what we're doing in the classroom in the passive learning modality of reading PowerPoint slides. And, you know, I used to tell my students in the classroom, even my undergrads, I'm not going to insult your intelligence because you can read the book. Now, my responsibility is how do I bring augmenting material, and preferably not just other people's research, but my own research. I mean, we have students who have presented research. Are we as faculty presenting our research in the classroom to incentivize our students to want to go out and learn more on their own? Are we developing student learning research projects for them that gets them to understanding what a global environment is really like, and what's the global competition that they are up against? I have traveled internationally to a good number of countries in Europe, and I teach internationally. And I can tell you, I have run into students and educational institutions that run circles around even our top institutions. The game has changed, and we have to make the decision if we're going to up our game. And I think we all have it. I mean, when I talked to the nursing staff, faculty, one of the things that they talked about, we're practitioners as well as we are teachers. That's an edge up. Because to be able to take the textbook and then say, now this is what the textbook says, now this is what really happens in a trauma center or really happens in XYZ environment, that's critical for students to be able to understand how to blend theory to praxis. But the real question is, then how can we prove that they're learning? How do we close the loop? And that's not easy. When I left Governor State, we were going for AACSB accreditation, which is the top business school accreditation, and we were struggling with that closing the loop concept. But we got to start working there. So that's all I wanted to say. I want to set that context. We're not getting away from that assessment piece. Whether we choose to keep it in the mission or not is not the issue. It is the standard to which we will be evaluated. Okay. Any other questions for Byron? Okay. And by the way, some of y'all look the same from 10 years ago. Keep doing what you've done.
Thank you.
Okay, so briefly, I want to talk about organizational culture. Now, some of you might be wondering, why did I put my bio at the back? I really haven't updated our website to talk about what my background and experience is, but when I first met with the nursing faculty, The one thing that I wanted to let them know, I'm just not out here doing something for the sake of doing. This is what I am trained educationally and professionally to do. So that's why you've got the bio sketch back there, and I believe sometimes when we can do our own change, it's prudent not to bring outside consultants in, because we can be our own best experts. But I just wanted to give you a snippet of my background that credentializes me, since I have to ask, how are you credentialized when you're teaching in the classroom to do what you do? This is what credentializes me to be able to lead us through this process. So what is culture? This is a definition, as you can see from the citation by Edgar Schein out of MIT, that's been around for quite some years. In fact, he is considered to be the guru on organizational culture. But as we deconstruct this definition, there are some critical points here that I think we need to really focus on. First of all, it's learned behavior. Now, if something is learned, does that then infer that we can unlearn it? Yes. Absolutely. And learn new behaviors. So is learned behavior in terms of how we solve problems of external adaptation and internal integration. Now, it's worked well enough that it's considered valid. Didn't say it's considered functional, but it's considered valid. And it's taught to new members, which means it perpetrates. It's taught as the correct way to perceive, think, and feel. And one of the things that's important to understand about culture is that organizations, through their vision statements, their mission statements, can purport to have a specific culture. And then you have the subculture. And the subculture might be the people who are at the water fountains, teaching correct behavior. Well, yeah, they told you this, but now let me tell you how it's really done. So not only do you have to be cognizant of what the organizational culture is, but you also have to be aware of what the subculture is as well. So how does this definition impact us, our cultural initiatives, and our reaccreditation processes? Specifically, we must understand, identify, and challenge our paradigms regarding what are our basic assumptions. What are our basic assumptions about ourselves, our capabilities as an institution, as individuals? What are our assumptions about our students? How do we solve problems? Do we go at it? Or do we kind of sit back passively and hope they kind of resolve themselves? What we consider to be valid behaviors and propositions, what do we accept as the norm in how we communicate with one another, how we treat one another, how we treat our students? And how do we teach our culture and express it? What are the positive behaviors that we want to have promulgated? The concept of culture also implies that there's structural stability. That means it's been institutionalized for quite some time. And the only way that you can make that change or evoke that change is that you have to destabilize that structural stability. And that can be uncomfortable because you're forcing people, we're forcing ourselves to move into a different mindset, to challenge our own basic assumptions and behaviors to say, is this how we want to continue? All of these are tied to behaviors, emotions, and cognitive elements. And when you challenge behaviors, emotions, and cognitive elements, you're invoking cognitive dissonance. Now, in the change process, cognitive dissonance is good. It's not good if you're isolated, but it's good if we all are sharing that discomfort, that we can have a conversation about why we're uncomfortable and where we want to move towards a different level of comfort. How does this proposition or Shine's continued definition impact us in our movement towards our new home and our engagement in our self-studies? First of all, we have to question our behaviors, our emotions, and our cognitive healthiness. For example, we have to question why students don't feel valued by all their faculty. Now, real or imagine, that's a perception that they articulate. And we have to validate that that's their perceived reality and look at it and say, through our own destabilizing assessments, what do we need to do different? We need to define the core values that we choose to serve as our guiding praxis. We say we're family. And that's good, but what does that really mean? What are the core values that bind us together as a family?
Accountability, communications, diversity, attentiveness, harmony, understanding, respect,
And then the question is, do we live them on a daily basis? Well, there are those that would beg to differ. So we have to entertain the yeses, they exist, and those that say, I don't feel that those core values are extended towards me. We should redefine our relationships and how we view the construct of family. Our family is getting ready to expand, change. And what does that mean? And just as we have some anticipation about new people coming into the family, the new family members have anticipation about coming here. How are we going to embrace them? How are we going to make them feel welcome? We should honor the best of where we are and where we've been in order to effectively move towards our new future. One of the propositions of positive psychology, and more specifically appreciative inquiry, is that when you focus on the best, it's generative. It gives you energy to move towards. For example, if I walked into a meeting on a Monday morning and said, we're going to have to take a look at the things that we didn't do well last week in order to meet this week's objectives, I'm not going to have a whole bunch of happy campers around that conversation. I'm going to have people probably very focused on, playing a CYA game and doing all sorts of things. Say, wasn't me. But if I simply change the perspective, the focus, and say, let's focus on the things we did well last week and look at how we can build on our goals for this week, have I changed the energy level there? Absolutely. By simply changing the language. A descriptive process of how we interact with people, with our students, is important. And the example I've used for years has been when my daughter was in first grade, she was identified as having attention deficit disorder. Now, the conversation that the educators used and still use is that you are ADD, to which I flipped that dialogue with her and annually met with the teachers to give them a little mini lesson on appreciative inquiry. And I would say, Caitlin, you have ADD like mom has hypertension, especially when you get on my nerves. But the interpretation of have versus you are was quite different. Who can tell me what the difference is in simply choosing to use different language? What? Right. You can change it. You can change your locus of control. Absolutely. So by simply being cognizant of the language we use with ourselves, because sometimes we're doing so much that we don't take that step back to appreciate and recognize what we are doing that's making a difference in someone's life, and how we are descriptive towards one another and towards our students. Those simple changes in concepts can significantly alter our relational aspects of family. Family within our internal staff and faculty community, family including our students and our external constituents as well. Some of the major categories are culture that we'll be looking at. What are observed behavioral regularities, our customs, our traditions, group norms, rooted metaphors or artifacts. My first university that I worked at, we had budget for everything, but nobody spent money. Because it was a Benedictine school, and they were taught that the Benedictine way was to live a life of frugality. And one of the monks would always tell me, Chris, you need to read the rules of St. Benedict to understand this. And I picked up the rules of St. Benedict one day and read it, and guess what? It wasn't there. What are the artifacts that are around us? And this is going to be particularly important when we go into the new building. What are our espoused values? How do we live it? What's the formal philosophy? What's the rules of the group? What's the cultural climate? What's our embedded skills? Our habits of thinking, or our mental models, or as we'll see today, our paradigms? And what are our shared meanings? Lastly, as I said, you can have a dominant culture or a dominant purported culture and many subcultures. So we have to be cognizant of where those pockets of the subculture lies. So what are our real opportunities? We can create a shared vision that everyone here is committed to, and add to, enhance our core values, but more importantly, identify how we're going to live them. We have the opportunity to collectively describe a desired future. When we evoke change, what do we want to change to? What's our vision? And how do we engage the commitment of everyone? Everyone's participation is important. How do we invite people to the table? At some point in time, we have to invite our new family members to our conversations on culture change, to our conversations on curriculum, to our conversations on assessment, to all of our conversations, because they will become, 2016, our family. We can collectively reshape our values regarding healthcare education. Just look at what our students did today. That's phenomenal research. The ability to go out, for example, and educate people in the community that may not have access to that research. We have the ability to rethink old paradigms and invite new paradigms that can inform a new vision and our culture. And as a result of those changes, we have the ability to rebrand Malcolm X College. And that's what I think is very exciting. So, while we're loading up the first film, why don't we take a 5-minute break? President, pardon me? Yeah, stretch break. And for those of us like myself that need to make a run to the ladies' room or men's room break. 5 minutes, stretch. Before we get started, you've seen two very different films with some very powerful concepts. Comments, thoughts you want to share, questions before we get into our breakout? And lunch will be here at 12:30. Anyone? And then Greg.
This is, can you hear me? Yes. This is the second time I've seen these movies. And the question for me has been, what is our paradigm at the college? Because if we don't understand the paradigm, it's going to be difficult to go into the vision. And I think it's not only the paradigm at the college, but what is the current paradigm in terms of higher education? Because that will determine how we see our students. And if we are able to understand that, I think we can think in terms of a different paradigm that will bring a new vision. Otherwise, we're going to go back. And the paradigm, I think, is the big picture, and then we're going to be able to focus on what we want to accomplish as Malcolm X College.
Just a quick comment. When I was watching the movie, or whatever we want to call it, the excerpts, I felt like it reminded me a lot of me. And the reason that I say that is because since I've been here at the great Malcolm X College, I'm able to change in the course of where I am to make the place better than I found it. I think a lot of you guys know me. And I always try to put the student in the college in the center. It's not about me. It's not about what I want. So what VP talked about earlier, from where we are now to where we need to go, I'm up for the challenge. But the challenge to my coworkers and my colleagues are, if we quit fighting and we embraced one another, we can get to go to where we need to be. But that's not the only thing that I saw in there. The other thing was, when I leave here today, how many people have I brought with me? And when I talk about how many people that I've brought with me, means the students, my coworkers, my administrators. So are we going to do this as one, just like Brian said? Or are we going to continue to do our thing in silos? And nobody really wins that challenge. Nobody really wins that challenge. You know what I say to the young people that the president and the director of nursing believes in me to do? It's this. I say, when we know better, we do better in order to get to our best. And one thing that I'm proud to know is the people who sit before me here at Malcolm X College will truly get to their best.
Yeah, Dr. Easley, I'd like to answer your question. It's almost like it's a loaded question. I guess Brian had indicated, what is our current paradigm? And I'm really glad that that question was asked, because this is something that we all are aware of, and we can see the change. Currently, the paradigm for instruction is like it has been for the last couple of 100 years or more, where you have the classroom and the teacher technically teaching up in front and the teacher as the expert. But now, as we know, the paradigm has changed with different modalities as far as presentation of information. Now you have what's called the blended classroom, where you have the teacher, but also you have online learning. So you can go in the classroom and learn, but also you can learn online. And then on top of that, now we have massive open online courses where we have experts at these well-known, distinguished universities offering courses, and our students can benefit from it. We shouldn't be afraid of it, but we can look at this as supplemental education. And there's a lot of other things to look at too. When we look, education is changing. Now education, at one point, it was at a very high level, very costly. Books were costly. But notice now that everything is coming down, because what they're doing now is decided that let's come up with open education now. Let's make everything basically free and inexpensive to the students. So now students can, and this is not my opinion, this is stuff that I've seen, but students are choosing and picking what they want to learn or where they can learn from. For example, at a university in Georgia, you can get a computer science master's degree for $7,000. That's unheard of. So education now has become very competitive, and now as an instructor or a teacher, we all have to be on top of our game and be able to work with all modalities. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add I just want to add a perspective of assessment to the issue of the paradigm discussion. A philosopher said, when you look at human practice, then you don't need to look any further to who or he or she is. In other words, our expression of what we do in practical things actually identifies our beliefs, our vision, our goals, whether we state it explicitly or not. Now, for us as a college, the result of our assessment activities in SESI and all those data give us an actual physical quantification of what we are right now in terms of our paradigm kind of level. There are things we do well, as shown by those different results. There are things where we need re-engagement and all those other issues. And I do believe that changing paradigm is a dialectical process.
That's absolutely, that's important not only for us, but I think the thing that we have to continue to remember is that our students come to us with societal paradigms and paradigm paralyses that they have unfortunately internalized. And to them, to many of them, the world is saying there's a limit, there's a box around you in terms of where you can go and how far you can go. But yet we know that that's not true. So not only are the concepts of vision and paradigms important for ourselves, but it's important that we internalize it so that we can convey it to our students as well. That there are no boundaries except the boundaries that they allow themselves to accept. Now there may be some obstacles they've got to step across. And our job, part of our job and our responsibility is to help them. I listened to them yesterday. One student talked about she has 3 kids. I think she said she's a single parent with 3 kids, and but that education was important to her because she was the first one in the family that was going to be getting a college degree. And I'm like, wow. And I can only imagine what that's like to have to arrange for childcare and all the other issues that go along with that. But she was there last night at 5:30 with us dialoguing about how we can improve. It was important enough for her. And that sent a very strong message in terms of our responsibilities. Anyway, okay. I'm sorry. Oh, forgive me.
That's okay. I'm going to just backtrack a little bit when you're talking about a paradigm shift. And I agree so much with Dean Javier that we need to understand what our current paradigm is before we can move on to another. I have a little sticky note in my office of something I heard one time that I believe in so strongly, that nothing ends until it ends right. And I think that's true internationally, of course, organizationally and interpersonally. And I think we have to work on that. I think I was so hopeful when I heard I was not able to attend because of conflicts, what you had said, Dr. Easley, about perhaps some of the faculty were not at those meetings because they feel disenfranchised. And I think there are some problems of morale and problems of feeling that we haven't been heard. And but I am hopeful because I think there is a lot of energy in this room to be released and a lot of hopefulness and a lot of good feeling about the job that we do. But I do think we have to fix some things so that that energy can be released.
I agree. Thank you. Any other thoughts? Okay, I'm getting ready to get out of my box in terms of how I'm structuring the agenda. So if you pull it out and just roll with me on this, I'm going to do some consolidation in order to be able to make sure that we are going to have a full and robust debriefing opportunity, because the sharing of perspectives is the first step. Dialogue is one of the most important change initiatives. In fact, if you ever want to really study the power of dialogue and change, research discourse analysis, because it begins to help you understand how through dialogue we can begin to break down some of the thematic or engage in thematic analysis to understand where our forward movement is. And that's where my ears, and I want your ears to be heading towards, is picking up what are going to be the themes that you hear coming out of today, so that we can, as we move into implementation, really begin to focus on those themes. Another piece of information that I sent to the Academic Task Force and Faculty Council, but will be disseminating to those that make the decision and commitment to work as a part of the temporarily named by soon-to-be Dr. Essian, the Climate and Culture Team, but the name is out for debate, but that's what we're temporarily calling it, will be a SWOT analysis of various areas and programs. And it's been some very enlightening information that has come out of that. Byron was able to centralize some of the themes that people identified in the SWOT analysis, and there's some phenomenally strong points that we talk about, and yet there's some opportunities that are really low-hanging fruit in terms of being able to improve the things that we do. So you know, that is data that I will definitely be sharing as we move forward towards implementation. Because as I said, the important thing to understand, today is just the first step. Just the first step. All right, if we pull out the agenda, you have an 11:15 to 12:15 assignment. And what I'm going to ask you to do, and you might need to configure your chairs a little differently, but to work in tables of approximately 8 to 10 people, but no more than 1 to 2 people from the same area. This is an opportunity for dialogue with people that you normally don't work with and you normally don't interact with. Now, I'll be floating around, we'll be floating around to hear the conversations. I'm asking you to share your stories. And I think that the themes that I'm asking you to have a conversation around are pretty clear. What gives you joy in your job? What makes you happy? When have been some of your most memorable moments working with colleagues? Thank you. Okay, my paradigm just went back to the light. What were the key components of those memorable moments? Not just to say, well, I was happy when we did, or this was exciting for me. What were some of the behavioral attributes that were happy, that made you happy? I'm asking you to talk about the strengths of your delivery modalities. Now, and there's two, three other points there. When I say have a conversation, I'm not asking you to go through boom, boom, boom. Look at the questions and develop a conversation around the critical points. At each table, there will be a person who's responsible for recording. So each table recorder will need to come up and get a little easel pad and a marker. So you'll be the scriber to capture the data, which at the end of today, I'm going to ask you to make sure we get. Because it's important that we archive, we feed this back to you. This becomes our template, our design. One of the questions or constructs talks about your students. Oftentimes we don't realize that we touch lives. We make a difference. We don't just convey learning or technical information. Students see us as mentors. They see us as representatives of strength for them. So I want you to talk about the highlights of those experiences. Share. In other words, share your successes. Now, what I am asking you to capture, and this is where the recorder is really important. What are some of the attributes you found that you have in common? What did you learn about your colleagues? What did you learn about the commonality that you feel about your students? And what were some of the differences you have? Because commonality isn't just always good. Sometimes it's those differences that make us unique and able to build competency. What were some of the core values you found in common. And don't just go to what's on the board, on the, what do you call those things? The pillars. Sorry, I'm waiting on the pizza, you know. Huh? The columns. But what did you hear? And how are these core values important? So you're sharing your stories, and then you're really synthesizing this piece. Clear so far? Okay. Now, we're going to combine the two initiatives. So let's flip over to page 5. I'm sorry, page 4. So after you've had this conversation, after you've captured this data, this information, your next step is to vision and dream about what you see the new Malcolm X College being. And the recorder, you'll be again keeping the information. What should be the guiding core values? So that conversation of what you saw were the core values should stream from now. Okay, let's synthesize them and agree to what do we believe should be our core values. And how will these core values translate into a new culture? And what would that culture look like? How do you want to see the brand? You know, branding, it's important. When I was working with the nursing staff, I said, our faculty, I said, when people Google City College's new school of nursing, what do you want to see there? When our students emerge from the nursing program, what do we want to see when they emerge? And the faculty were clear. They have a clear vision. Now, the next steps is how to implement that vision. And I'm asking the same question of all of you. When our students emerge, how do we want them to be seen? When people Google Malcolm X College, what do we want the world? Because as we've said before, understand, the world is looking at this consolidation. This is not just local to Chicago or local to Illinois. World Bank came in here, when was it, President? A year ago, to look at the model. We're making history. You're part of a new history. Now, how do you want the world to see us? Our Shanghai visitors going over to Shanghai, we were invited to come to Shanghai because of the programs here. How do we want the world to see us? How do we promote who we are? One of the most evident promotions is through our accreditation. The last thing we want on our website is that we on probation for anything. Because that looks kind of dumb. $251 million and we on probation. Doesn't sink. How will we, faculty, staffs, and I should ask students, collaborate as we move through the accreditation process? How will we work together? And what are the academic standards you look to achieve? You know, I used to tell my junior faculty members that would come after I was tenured at Governor State, I said, yes, we're a teaching institution. And that evoked a certain standard in terms of scholarship and things that we did around professional development. And then the paradigm shifted about a year or two later. And some of our colleagues that had been there for a number of years really got on the negative side of that paradigm shift because they couldn't see what it meant. But I used to tell my academic colleagues that I would mentor, I said, here's Governor's state standard and there's Harvard's. Now I'm gonna get my butt somewhere in between. Because I knew through the concept of scenario planning that the qualifications for faculty was morphing, it was changing, it was increasing, and even those of us at teaching institutions were going to be held to higher scholarship standards. And guess what? Now, the process for tenure and promotion at that institution has significantly shifted with a heavy emphasis on teaching and scholarship. And that was amazing. And a lot of my colleagues that had started out before myself, they could not make that leap. So as faculty, we have to be aware of what does this morphing global environment, and as it pertains to our brand, even mean for us? Has the connotation associated with community college started to shift in terms of where the professorate is expected to perform? And I tell you, one of the grandest things to be able to do, kind of ego tripping, is when you put in your syllabus your own work for your students to research and study. We got to think about that stuff. So, the last couple of points for discussion on that piece would be what should be our new operating paradigms, behavioral norms, ground rules for collaboration, preferred leadership styles, as well as our academic standards. And what would be your desired outcomes as a team for your students, scholarship, personal and professional development? So I want you to stretch. So we're going to combine the two assignments. And then about 1:30, 1:45, we'll start to debrief. Because a part of the change is to hear what your colleagues respectfully have to say, as well as what your team said. In between, our pizza will be coming up shortly, and as I said before, for those of you who are a part of the non-exempt staff, I cannot ask you to stay to work through your lunch. If you choose to leave, you can leave and then come back. It is a choice. Okay? So, let's get up. Let's shift. We may need to pull some tables together. Again, no more than 1 to 2 people per area. And one other thing I forgot, the other role at the table will be to select the person that will be doing the report out. Now, you may want the recorder and the person reporting out to be the same, because sometimes the only ones that can read their handwriting. That's fine. But we need the person identified who will come up here and do the report out. How did you feel and what did you learn, not related to the questions, but associated with the interaction of going through this process? Who wants to start? Now are you out of battery? Try that one over.
But anyway, what I learned in the process is, even though I worked with different people from a different department,
Good. Byron? Ah, did everyone hear him? Okay, Byron, you got to hit the mic.
Can you hear me now? I was saying that one of the commonalities that I found out we have is that we are all hopeful for the future.
All right.
So actually, as much as I've grown to love and respect Mr. Shumpert, I actually kind of learned the opposite of what he did, and that is, when it comes to paradigms, it's important to factor in relative experiences. And since, you know, rightly or wrongly, I always think of everything first as an accountant. And it's good to be around a group that doesn't, because they help me understand that the real world thinks like people instead of like machines, like I tend to think. And it helps me understand that it's all needed, that if we have those folks who are able to think in a more qualitative perspective versus those quantitative people like myself, we have all the bases covered, and I think that that bodes well for the success of our college going forward.
Bless you. Thank you. Anyone else? What did you learn? What did you feel? Let's really get it in the visceral level. What did you feel going through this process? Yep, step to the mic.
I don't know about anybody else in the room, but every time I'm working in groups, I have a certain level of anxiety. I'm always concerned that people are going to think differently, and I always am concerned that I'm going to be able to get my share in. And so I really enjoyed working with that group. They were very patient, and we got a lot done in that short period of time.
Great. All right. Woo-hoo!
Everyone in our group shared a passion for students getting it or student success, and that was kind of hot.
That's what we're here for, absolutely. Anyone else want to share what you felt going through the process?
I'm not going back to I'm just
I would say ditto for that comment. That was a commonality among our group too, and that's what I mean about it being very hopeful, a hopeful situation. I think the center of everybody's job is the students. That's the word refuge was used, that the classroom is really our refuge. That we feel really good being there. We feel good when students get things. We feel good knowing that we're empowering them, and also that we're part of a bigger picture of getting students into the workplace and just enriching their lives with education.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hey, Shepherd, you smart like something. I know all my colleagues. Listen, I'm not trying to talk just to talk, but you know, it was only one small disturbing thing that I heard at my table when we got to the challenges of how do faculty integrate the learning of our students. And you know what I heard? I heard some of us feel like we're entitled and we're treating people less than we need to do. And I heard that from an experienced person who came to City College, who went through the system of City College, and felt like we didn't give the attention to them that they deserved. And that was disheartening. Because I know one thing about this place and these people in this place, we can do it better. And I was sorry to hear that. And if I could apologize and change that, even though I wasn't exactly a part of it, I was a small part of it because I worked for Malcolm X College. We need to change that.
I just want to share for a moment, and then we'll deal with our raffle, what that classroom of refuge can be for students. Remember I said earlier that students come to the table, they come here, and they carry a lot on their plate. And when they come into the classroom, you know, we're focused on teaching, but sometimes we have to, not sometimes, all the time, set forth a culture in the classroom that allows them to feel that they can be as well as learn. Do you understand what I'm saying there? And I'll share the personal experience of how that can feel sometimes as a student, because I went back to school to begin the process of obtaining my master's degree in divinity. And right at the time that I was accepted into seminary, my husband died very suddenly, no prior illness or anything. He had a massive heart attack. And that just working towards just stabilizing my family. My daughter was beginning high school. My son was in his senior year of college. I never allowed myself the opportunity to just be or grieve. Seminary was my sanctuary. That classroom was my sanctuary. The teachers, and you know, it's kind of tough teaching another PhD, but we were colleagues, but they were also my teachers. The students, we were there for a common reason. And I remember in one class, we were doing an exegesis exercise on Old Testament, and it was a very creative exercise. It was in a theater construct that we were writing about. And one of my colleagues in the classroom wrote about an experience. She was in her pastoral training period in the hospital, and of a family that had come in. They had just lost the husband in the family. And I mean, the way she described that scenario took me back that year prior to when, because it was almost identical to the night that my husband died. But the safety net I felt in that classroom, I just broke down and cried. But what was important, I didn't have to say anything. I didn't have to make excuses. I didn't have to be Dr. Easley. I could be me. Because I didn't realize how much emotion I had bottled up and suppressed to keep my family going and hadn't paid attention to me. The safety net of the classroom, the refuge, we don't understand sometimes that students, it's not necessarily tied to their socioeconomics, it's tied to just life. And again, I didn't feel inhibited. I could just be. And sometimes the criticality of our reaching students and reaching our colleagues is to be in the moment where we don't need to sit and counsel, we just need to sit and be. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So please never, never underestimate the sanctuary of the classroom, because that may be the only safe space that they have to be. That was the only place I felt that I could let loose, that I didn't have to explain my emotions. So, we carry a tremendous responsibility. Tremendous. Okay, on the lighter note, let's get this raffle going so we can get our degree.
Thank you very much. I'm very proud of my table. My table just told me I'm the man, but I'm just the man who know the man, but I will stand and deliver in the meantime. I'm going to lay this down, Veep, and we're going to, all right, I'm doing classroom management now. Thank you very much. Okay, now we want to talk about our great experiences, and in our group we talked about receiving success stories from those you've assisted. So Deep said put some meat around it, so those people who we have taught, who leaves this place, leaves this space, go out into the world, work, and continue to come back to see us for that reason. We talked about witnessing intellect and fluid learning exchange. It's not just one way, but it's being innovative to get it done with all of those who are on different levels in our classrooms. We talked about seeing students persist through obstacles to reach their goals. And that could be a very challenging thing, but we figure out ways to do it. The next thing is, we talked about students committing to being shown their real potential. So us as educators, professors, reaching down into a student and seeing that potential and bringing it to surface and making it happen. So now we talk about our core values. Our core values talk about our high expectations from one another and the students. So setting the standard, meeting them where they are, and bringing them up to that standard. Then we talked about teamwork. And teamwork doesn't have to do with just the student. It has to do with the student. It has to do with us. It has to do with the people who set the place up. It has to do with the people in admissions. It has to do with the people in registrar's office, the business office. All of those things contribute to the success of the students, that teamwork we talked about. That student first motto that we use. How do we put a student first and really make them feel like you're a winner of this game? You're first. You're first, and I can use me as an example. When I say my students is first, when I bring in those high school students, the first question I throw at them to answer is, what does advocate mean? And they go, ugh. I say, your homework assignment is, when you see me in your next class in my office, you got to tell me what advocate is. And then once they explain what advocate is, a person that looks out for your best interests, I say, yeah, I'm your advocate. I make sure that you come into the college, and when you're in the college, I sign you into a class. I meet with you. If you run into trouble, here I am. If you've got any questions, guess who you call? And they go, oh, you, Mr. Shumpert? Right. I'm your advocate. That's how we got to be for our students, and that's what we talk about. And reaching their academic success. How do we do that? What does it look like? Don't get quiet on me now. What does it look like? We got to know what it looks like. Our deliverables in institutional advancement and research. Okay, our accountability. And we talked about engagement and having an active classroom. What does that look like? You know, if I go to my classroom and I walk down the hall, which we often do, and people sitting in there with their hats on and on their phones, and it makes me wonder, am I managing my classroom? And I'm not blaming people now, because remember, we're professionals, so we talk about fulfilling the positives that we do. Fulfilling research. Having our students learn how to research, how to manage their time. We learn a little bit about that in college success. We talk about the joys of our job. We ask the question, what drives us to work every day? For me, what drives me to work every day is the people. You, and then the students. Because I've got this thing in my head. As soon as I walk into the great Malcolm X College, you know what happens? I want to help as many people as I can today. Sometimes it gets me in trouble, but that's okay. My intention is not to get in trouble, not to treat them good, not to. So the little stuff we can work out, right? Hello, somebody. Right? Yeah. Okay. So then we talk about the interactions on a daily basis. So when we interact with them, we're changing our mindset. We're changing what we say to them. We're changing how we engage them. We're changing how we empower them. We're doing it with a purpose. Okay? Then we move to the opportunity to create change. Who has the opportunity to create change? Us and who? Them. Because all we got to do as professors, as teachers, as workers is meet them halfway, make them meet us halfway, and let them know all the other opportunities that they need is in this place. The only reason that you fail at Malcolm X College is because you don't take advantage of the opportunities that's here. You come in, we've got the Academic Support Center, we've got the Language Lab, we've got the professors in their office with office hours, we got all of this stuff in place already. But if we don't share it with them, they won't know. And then feeling the anticipation of seeing your programs implemented and working successfully. Not just putting them in and don't nothing happen, but putting them in and making sure it's working like a fine machine. Because we knew what we were doing when we set it up that way. Okay, then we talked about having the opportunity, you, I, coming from the top, having the opportunity to change lives. Every day we have the opportunity to do that. It says change and impact lives. That's the opportunity. So that's the joys. And the last thing says closing the gap. What does that mean? Closing the gap. You said put some meat on it, remember? Closing the gap means Chase Bank came here last year, help me with the date, early last year, and did a press conference here with the mayor. And they gave us $15 million to close the gap. What does that mean? That means the students over here who want jobs, workers, people want jobs. And on this side, the employer says, okay, we've got jobs here, but in the middle, nobody knew what they needed to do in order to close the gap. So Malcolm X College got the $15 million because we started city colleges. Okay, I thought it was Malcolm X. They always want us to share the money, prayers, but that's okay. But we got the money because we started at step 1, and when they caught up to us, we was all ready to step forward. So we had put it in motion, and we had showed them from city colleges of Chicago that we were headed in the right direction. So that's what that means, closing the gap. I got some more good stuff, boy. I was sitting with a brilliant table back there, I'm telling you. Oh, watch, she told me watch your time. We want to get everybody. The intersection. Students first with high expectations, okay? Desired outcomes and goals. We got to measure student success through assessment. Academic services and the holistic development of it. Then we've got the knowledge and the dynamic learning exchange that we talked about. Okay, now I'm going to show you what our brand looks like. Once we set our brand out, our brand looks like all of this stuff. Lifelong learners, collaborative, motivated, highly skilled, future learners, being competitive, transformation people, being confident when they leave us. When they leave us, once they put their hand on stuff, things that I love about Malcolm X College is once they get into their programs, they're practicing so they got their uniforms on. So when they leave up out of here, they know what they're doing. They ain't got to go and go, oh, I'm scared. They've been doing it so long that they're very comfortable of it. So that's our brand and outstanding communications in our brand. We help students communicate well, but we don't want them to only communicate well. When they get in their professions, we want them to be able to write, read, do all of that. Faculty, staff, collaboration. What does that look like here at the college? A follow-up of assessment, communications across the departments. Then we remember the common goal, whatever that common goal we set. We remove our personal agendas. So we put the college in the center first, and then we move about helping the student get to where they need to go. We would be respectful for not only our colleagues, but students as well. We got to respect each other in order to move out to our colleagues as well. And creating the bug-in. You tricked me on that one. Where did that one come from? Oh, that's buy-in. Her writing was bad. Don't worry about it. Oh, the buy-in. Okay, creating the buy-in means exactly what we're doing now. How many people in here are on an assessment team? Don't raise your hand. If you're not on an assessment team, you haven't bought in. We need to be involved in it. Anything that changes starts with who? Myself, them, yeah, with me. Hello? Hello, somebody, I gotta go. VP, say hurry up. Quality, meaningful information delivery. Okay? Quality, meaningful information delivery. It's covering all those scales. She's looking at that watch again. But boy, this good stuff. Let me hear it for group number 1. Are you ready? Are you ready? Veep, listen. This is my last one. I don't do jokes. Y'all know me. I'm understand. Veep, I'm going to put this on the table, but I need $20. Piece over there. We done ran out of pizza. I had pizza. I don't eat leftovers, Veep. Thank you, Veep. Oh, thank you, brother. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Good afternoon, MMXC colleagues. My name is Sheila Wicks, and I'm in the Biological Sciences Department. The only reason I'm actually speeding this process up, we have a biology department meeting. I had the pleasure of sharing some of the 8 common cores with faculty members as well as advisors, April, Lakeisha, myself, Chris, Tracy, Albert, Candace, and Lorena. Now, many of these particular common cores coincide with some of the other 9 through 14 cores, so I'll go through each and every one of them. They're very brief, but I think they're going to be extremely effective when we're considering an important component for HLC. The first one is looking at dedication and how we care about our students, their well-being, and the resourcefulness. Our table really focused on what are the resources and the resourcefulness for our students, and that was extremely important in how things are dynamically changing now, especially for obtaining scholarships and other funding. Another thing we wanted to look at was the diversity, the passionate, outspoken curiosity, and the different opinions, but how we actually stimulate one another with different types of ideas. So this was actually what we learned about our colleagues. Like I said, we were amongst a table of faculty as well as advisors, and we found that we had so many different ideas, but at the same time we shared the same type of commonalities. Number 3, we looked at what are the attributes regarding your students that you find that we had in common. Advising and teaching. As faculty, we're doing lots of advising, and advisors are also doing lots of teaching. And what was really important is that many of our responsibilities, they coincide. Some of the things we find challenging is that our students they're setting goals that are unrealistic. So we're reteaching them how to set realistic, tangible goals, especially when we're looking at the job market and what is actually in demand now. The other thing that we looked at is we found, and this is not to be opinionated, that we know physiologically learning styles for men and women are quite different. And what happens is men think quite differently than females in the sense that time management, how we organize things, how we rationalize and put things together. So that is another challenge that we find in the classroom, that we would find that if we're approaching something like that with HLC, they actually know based on the demographics within the college. The next one, we found that what were some of the differences and or some of the commonalities. Again, everyone appears to be student-centered. So that was extremely important. And we know that teaching and advising, we transform to other areas in the college. It seems that every faculty member as well as advisor, we're going from a micro to a macro level of actually teaching our students, which is really great. Some of the differences we find, though, communication from staff and faculty to the students because of the variables. There is so many variations within the college, and that creates sometimes a dichotomy and misunderstandings, which really we can avoid those type of things, and it's because of the lack of communication. Some of the things we found as far as Common Core, we looked amongst ourselves and we said, well, let's focus on the pillars. The pillars are the foundation, I know, is what I remember when I came in here in 2006, and it was something other presidents have actually built on, and I'm like, we could just build on this. And what is happening is with the HLC, we're not trying to modify anything what we're doing with our college. We're just restructuring it and making it better. So what we focused on are the same type of common cores, specifically our accountability, which HLC will measure. We found that service, respect, and commitment and progress are important, and those are things that we can measure as far as adapt to change. We also found that moving forward with accreditation, we looked at future compliance. So the compliance was important in looking at innovative standards for higher learning. What really is going to captivate the HLC accrediting body? When they walk up here, many of us know 10 years ago, there was always that what is that makes Malcolm X stands out? And many of us were aware that when they walked the floors and they walked around, there were certain things that really stood out compared to others. And we want to make it even better than last time, because I guarantee probably some of those same individuals will probably be up here visiting us. And then the next one we looked at, how do our core values contribute to our brand of the new Malcolm X College? Well, is it really a new Malcolm X College, or are we just actually re-emphasizing it, restructuring our students, but we're not actually modifying the college, we're just restructuring. So these were the things we focused on, and then when you look further in the packet, many of these actually build on each other. So that was about it. We had a great time. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, well, all right, I'm going to do this. Hello, everyone. First thing that we did in my group was, thank you so much. You do? Awesome. First thing we did in our group is we decided what was the common area that we all could agree on. And what we decided was that why are we here? We are here to provide our students with the tools that they will need in order to be successful. That should be our driving force. That is what we decided. This is what we are going to focus on. That is where our commonality lies if we look at it across the board. Why are we here? Why do we get up every morning? We are here to provide our students with the foundations by which they can affect change in their lives through education. And that's what our goals as educators should be. What do we need to, how do we do this? By doing our jobs. We agreed that that was very nebulous. Doing our jobs. What do we mean by doing our jobs? We all have different jobs around here. Regardless of what we are teaching, we all have different ways of delivering that, and we have certain outcomes that are markedly different. But ultimately, it goes back to this, giving our students what they need in order to be successful. What did we learn and what did we learn, what did we share? Communication. I really enjoyed working with this group because everyone had something valuable to contribute. And we took a look at how we worked, and we decided that this is the way that we should be showing our students how they need to work, not just with themselves, but the classroom is a collaborative effort. Professor Ball made a very, very important observation that we often say, let's meet our students where they are. What do we do once we meet them where they are? We cannot allow them to remain stagnant. We must provide them with a way to change. That change must be intrinsic. They have to buy into it. They have to own it. And then we have to show them how to maintain that change. I'm going to move right on along here, Brother Shumpert. We talked about core values. We skipped ahead here, and we looked at our core values. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that we are the only institution in this country that bears the name of Malcolm X. Am I right? We are the only institution that bears that name. We are Malcolm X. And therefore, when we talk about core values, let's look at who he was as a man. He was an individual that believed that change came from within, intrinsic change through self-empowerment, through education, self-improvement, and awareness of self in juxtaposition to the world. That is what Malcolm X did. He never led a march, never got a house for anyone, was never involved in any massive movement. But what he did was he showed individuals how to use their minds to affect change in their lives and the lives of others. So with that, thank you very much. I'm done.
You want to just use ours? Sorry. Thank you. Can I use your assistance? Yeah, thank you. We got it. Thank you. Okay. And then ours reiterates a lot of what you heard today. I'm Abra Johnson. This is Dr. Hope Asian. So we just went through this model of going through our best moments and motivation, some of our core values, and then talking about what those things look like. So we talked about what really motivates us is academic freedom, so being in charge of our classrooms and our curriculum and being able to choose books. So even logistical things like this are one of the things that really motivates some of us as faculty. Of course, seeing students succeed, so student success is really important to all of us, as you guys have already said. We were also talking about positive growth and transformation. So again, the student narratives that we hear when students come back to us and say, you changed my mind, I saw it differently, or seeing students get better jobs or further their education. Those are some of the things that really motivate us, as well as faculty successes. So celebrating each other, supporting each other's successes. I know one of the people that I got tenure with, she's writing a textbook right now, so I'm really happy for her. Victoria Neighbors, if you don't know who she is, but we talked about the significance of supporting each other and having faculty transformation as success too. Transformations of faculty, so the way that we change over time as we commit to our students in our institution longer. So I myself went from adjunct for 6 years to full-time to tenure. Absolutely committed to the college. I'm a West Sider. I grew up coming to Malcolm X for Kwanzaa and art school and dance classes. So I always knew I wanted to be at Malcolm X. And so we see that transformation with lots of faculty as we grow in our commitment to the college and its goals. Student engagement is really important, so ensuring that students are on board, have buy-in, are engaged with the process, feel challenged to do better, feel committed to their own personal goals as well as the goals of our courses. Collaboration with administration as well as colleagues and students is really important and motivational to us, and some of our best moments come from that kind of collaboration. Also, our group cited the HLC experience of 2007, which might sound ironic, but many of us said that it was that moment that really brought people together. It formed some really strong bonds, and it showed that people could work well under pressure and well together, and they could put all their differences aside to come together to support each other to commit to the HLC accreditation process. Again, some of our strengths, we continue to learn a lot from each other, from our students as well. Even though we work in silos, we can always pull together and meet various challenges. So again, referring to the HLC experience. We're very flexible and work well with new leadership and shifting paradigms. So the HLC experience taught us that we can work well under pressure and that we are very flexible to meet our goals. We adapt well to changes. So again, as we go through this change, we've also experienced many other changes in the course of our commitment, and we found strength in adaptation and flexibility. I'm going really fast. So some of our guiding core values, we have them underlined. We were really focused on empathy and equality as our motivation, so to have a well-rounded, holistic student. Teaching in a transformational fashion. So again, I think Matthew just mentioned, so helping students seek personal transformation relative to their own goals, but also transformation of our own teaching styles and agenda, right? As needed for us to be successful in the classroom. We also talked about teaching in a contextualized manner, so helping students to understand the value of what they're learning in various contexts in their own lives, and even in contexts they cannot yet visualize, right? So to help them visualize the ways that what they're learning will eventually be useful. Empowering our students, so going back to our mission to empower students through education, we were convinced that we have a great mission, but we need to work more consistently on our practices to live up to that mission. What else? Did I miss anything? We want our students to be effective learners, but also peer teachers, right? So to be able to learn effectively and thoroughly, but also be able to teach others, especially being able to go back to their families, to their communities, to set themselves up for leadership, but also for educating others, so passing on knowledge to future learners, and mentorship. Faculty and staff mentorship by more experienced leaders, and also mentoring for students. We were also talking about assessment as a critical part of our core values. So assessment as a way to determine success and support needs, and as to support an ongoing dynamic process of teaching and learning. And so far as our new brand, we wanted to stick with this notion of empowering students to take greater ownership of their own learning process as a part of the empowerment through education goal. So that can also look like ensuring that we have better facilities, which we will have, right? State-of-the-art facilities as a part of that process. Greater faculty collaboration across disciplines, so interdisciplinary collaboration. Teach students to challenge us. Is that what we're saying? Yes, right? Teach students to question, to be critically thinking, to engage in discourse. And not feel threatened by that. Embrace ideas from new faculty. So we met some new faculty members. It's nice to meet you, I'm Abra. But embracing their new ideas and new paradigms as well, to challenge our own thinking and paradigms. Identify the best of the best practices and use those, and infuse the philosophies and narrative of Malcolm X, which Matthew also mentioned. So we were talking about actually learning Malcolm X's individual transformations, how he is 2 or 3 different people over the course of his life. And by the end of his life, he is a person that is about social justice and equality. And one of his famous maxims is the future belongs to those who prepare for it today. And that can be a part of our guiding mission. So the way that he was able to transform himself even against his own values, the values and expectations of others, to transform the way he saw inclusion and community and justice. And that's a narrative that we should embrace, to learn and embrace. So we were talking about what does that look like concretely. So maybe there was an idea about using the Cutlass as a museum as a part of orientation, so people could walk through that Cutlass and actually see the transformational narrative of Malcolm X and envision that for themselves individually as students. Again, more concrete stuff. So talking about peer and assessment support. So this is part of our collaborative model. So thinking about the way that we as peers across disciplines is part of shared governance. So as part of shared governance, and to be peer supports and reviewers of assessors of each other. Yeah, this is more concrete behavior. And then again, we were talking more about faculty, staff, and administrative collaboration. So to
to make sure that we maintain the collaborations with each other that we value and to increase them to build a holistic curriculum and student. Thank you. Professor Alston says something.
So my name is Omar. Hey. Hey. And it occurs to me that I want to thank you first for welcoming me to the Greg Shumpert Show. And it occurs to me that Greg and Nabra and Matthew and everyone that went before me kind of stole a lot of our thunder, right? It gets harder and harder for groups as you come up here to talk about something original. So I'm going to go with my plan B, and I'm going to talk about the construction that's going on across the street. It reminds me of a story, right? An anecdote. 3 men are digging a ditch, right? 2 are kind of lazy, and 1 is really aggressively digging that ditch. The first one is asked, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm doing my job." The second one is asked, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I'm digging a ditch," quite obviously. And the third one is asked, "What are you doing?" He says, "You know what? I'm building a cathedral, a shining cathedral." Right? 3 people all doing the same thing, and they're working towards the same goal in their own way, but they understand that goal in their own way, right? And when we look at the questions here, discovering our future as we celebrate our past, what kind of things have worked for us in the past, right? What kind of things are we good at, right? How can we build on those things, and how can we start addressing those things that maybe are not working so well for us? And the answer to that is communication. Right? Better communication, right? And what we need to do is we need to start communicating our goal, making sure that we all understand the goal in the same way, right? We got physical construction going on across the street. They've been at it for 1.5 years, and it's because they need to make a strong foundation, right? Because only on the strongest foundations can you build the tallest and most beautiful structures, right? What kind of growth is going on inside of us? What kind of construction are we doing inside of us? We're talking about communication. We're talking about, oh, I get joy when I help students, and oh, it makes me feel so good when students get good grades. It's true, because when we started saying, oh, the things that bring me joy are helping people, are making sure that when a student learns a lesson, when they nod and they go like this, when you really know you've reached the student, of course that's going to give everyone joy. But what are we doing to celebrate each other's joys? Right? We all have our own successes. We all have successes and failures every day here. And we're very willing to talk about those successes, but what about talking about those failures? How do you know that someone's not going through the same situation that you're going through? Right? You kind of promote your successes and kind of put the failures to the back. And we got to stop doing that. We got to be more open and communicate, because you never know. Someone might have encountered that same problem that you're having and found a way to address it. Right? So let's not just talk about the good stuff. Let's start working on the bad stuff too. Let's start finding ways to improve it, right? If the construction group across the street started seeing cracks in the foundation, do you think they would wait till the building was completed to go back and start addressing those cracks? No. What would happen? The building would fall down, right? When you see a problem, you have to start addressing that problem right away, right? And if I have a problem and I can't do it myself, if I can't fix that crack myself, I need to understand that I need to reach out to others to help me fix that crack, right? Because once again, only on the strongest foundation can we build the tallest and most beautiful buildings, right? You see the construction going on across the street. What about the construction within yourself, right? We're going to physically move in across the street in a year and a half, right? Are we ready to make that change? Are we ready to make that change? And actually, if you're ready to make that change, like myself and the rest of my group back there, I want you guys to take a look at a logo that we came up with. Yeah. So we're doing big things back there. So yeah, everyone that went before me, they talked about the little things, right? The importance of making sure that we share successes and making sure that everyone has communicated the idea of joys. That's the camera right there. Making sure that we share the good stuff. We need to understand that everyone here is a part of a team. We're a part of a family. And if one person has a problem, then we all have a problem, okay? We're gonna walk across that street. We're gonna walk across that street into that new building as a family. We're gonna walk across together. So let's do everything that we can to put ourselves in the best situation so that when we walk over there, we're walking into the shiniest and strongest structure, not only physically, but mentally and spiritually because of the people inside of it. Thank you.
Yep, nope, last page, very, very last page, because he stole mine. Let's see if I can get this to play. Because he stole all my stuff. So I'm just going to the last page. So for anybody that watches television or loves the Blackhawks, Blackhawks have a new commercial out. It's called One Goal. And as the head coach comes out, he says he has one job, and that's to get to the players where they need to go. Then they'll cut to another player, and another player says, my job on the team is to bring defense to the team. And it goes one by one with each one of the players. And the tagline is, there's one goal. One goal, and that's to get to the end, to get to the Stanley Cup, right? To play as a team, to work as a team. So that's basically what our brand would be. One goal, one team, one mission, shared by everybody. There's no distinction between whose job is who. There are no lines, right? You live outside the box. That's what makes you successful. Uncomfortable does not mean negative. You should be uncomfortable. You should always be itching, wanting something new, wanting something different, wanting to learn something. I grew up in a household where I was the first person to go to college. So the only thing that I was definitely taught was every day you should learn something new. That's what'll make you successful. You should never stop that, no matter what. Our group consisted of staff people and alumni. I'm an alumni. I fell in love with this program. I fell in love with my instructors, this university. I switched from another community college that was closer to my house, and it was scary to come over here. The reputation preceded itself, and I wasn't sure if that's what I wanted to do. And I asked around, and people said, no, it's a good place to come to school. So I came in. I had a few small mountains that I had to overcome when I came here, and I wanted to stick it out. And I'm so glad that I did. And then I was afforded the opportunity to come back and work here and be a part of what was happening in our profession and to help people get through this program and learn it. And that's probably one of the best decisions that I've made. I've done a lot of things in my life, but this is definitely one of the most fulfilling things that I've done up until this point. So I also grew up with one thing that was ingrained in me. All work has value. It doesn't matter what you do. Like I said, I owned my own company, but I unloaded my own trucks at 3 o'clock in the morning. I took out the trash. I did absolutely everything. I stood right next to staff people and did the same thing that they did. I never hung my title out there. I never said I was the owner. And I think that's a part of what really makes this place work, is when there are no defined lines. Everybody has the same goal, and that's to get our students to the end, to feel the same thing that I felt when I graduated, the first one in my family, out of college and could be a success. And I think everybody needs to share that goal. So.
So my name is Latasha Davis. I'm with the Adult Education Department, and I had the fine pleasure of working with the individuals in the back. Go team! At any rate, we won't bore you with any more of what we've already discussed today. We've heard some really exciting things about being a student-centered facility. We just wanted to add two things that we hadn't heard be mentioned, and one was a rigorous curriculum. We know in the last 20 or 30 years, a lot of weight has been given to being able to meet all of the social needs of students, their emotional needs and things like that in the classroom. And while all of that is important and great, we can't get away from, though, holding them to high expectation, and we can't do that without starting with a curriculum that sets those standards. So we really want to make sure we do that and temper that with trying to respond to their other needs, especially in adult ed. We also talked a little bit about retention, and we talked about that getting students to the college. I'm wondering, is that a bigger barrier to our success rate, as is getting students once they're here to stay with us, to be successful, and to go through our entire program? So I'm sure at some point of leadership, there's somebody's task to figure out how many students come to the college and how many of them really matriculate through our processes. So I believe we're missing a big gap with just those that make any contact with Malcolm X College. And so our job as instructors, as educators, no matter what area we work in, we all have the job of trying to keep our students here, and we can't do that without classrooms that are engaging and without teachers that are professionally trained. We also we talked a little bit more about the new culture and the new climate. We know we're moving into a new building. It's going to be nice, but if we don't take a new culture and climate with us, it'll just be a new building. And so we were thinking about the collegiality of our staff and thinking about some of the inconsistencies in our departments. And we were highlighting that we need to make sure that we're supportive of one another. I know I've worked with some members of the Malcolm X body, and they'll throw somebody under the bus, so to speak, working with a student, and it'll make reference to another person. That's not professional, it's not warranted, and so we need to provide support to one another. We talked about collegiality. We know that all of us don't have the same spirit and don't come to work with the same mission as we should, but certainly we need to support one another and supporting our students. We also need to think about that paradigm shift, because like we did something cool. You see our colors? And we put our title at the bottom. We were trying to shift that whole paradigm, but we were thinking about that was just a video that some of us will go home and never, ever think about again. But it truly is the work we do here. As being a new person in Malcolm X, I've found that challenge when you have something new or exciting to share, and people have been doing things for 20 years, it's like you just go home and give up. So I encourage you to do as I do a lot of days. I don't give up. You can ask my dean and my associate dean, and you can ask my manager. I don't give up. So don't give up on trying to have your fair share and how your program can improve. And then we need to be consistent and make sure we have a good flow of information. Sometimes we know about things. We know that we're in an email kind of world, and so a lot of things come from that. So we have some responsibility to check that so that we know what's going on. How many times we've been out and they say, "I sent that to you by email." So I don't think email is the only way or the #1 way, but we have to all get serious about doing that so we can stay in flow of information. And then all that does go with our great leadership. We know that just by human nature, we don't all think alike, but certainly we have to get in where we fit in. We have to join in on that mission and do everything we can within our work to make sure we're forging that new piece. And then the last one we wanted to talk about was transition also. I know with adult ed, that's a big focus for us. And so we brainstorm ideas and we come up with different things, and maybe we try them for one semester and we get away from it. So we just got to stick with what we have. So when we write these fancy things down, we just have to do that piece about taking it from theory to practice. So that's what I encourage all of you to do, and thank you.
Bravo. Thank you.
Look, hello. We're here representing our team here. You guys can raise your hands. Gregory, Professor Davis, Mary, hi. We actually spent quite a lot of time on certain sections of the questions. We really became engaged when we were discussing the joys, in terms of joys of teaching, joys of interaction in the classroom. So I kind of wanted to go over this really quickly. Overall, we discussed the overall joy that we have in terms of actually realizing our passion. We're very passionate about our subjects. We're very passionate about the content which we share with our students. And we also are very passionate about the namesake of this institution, with Malcolm X himself being a example of education as a tool of empowerment, as a tool of change within our societies and ourselves. We talked about the overall, I won't say burden, I'm sorry, the overall job that we have in making sure we continue that legacy and tradition. So in terms of joy, we want to make sure that we take the information that we have and we are giving it to our students in a way that they are able to apply the skills both in the class and beyond. And we talked about, you know, what a great privilege that is. In terms of our modalities, we realize that we do have a common interest. Our classrooms, in addition to it being a refuge for the students and also for the instructors, we really work hard to make sure that we're relatable, that we're not just giving them information that seems forward, but also kind of, you know, kind of connecting the dots so that they see the information and how it can be applied outside of the classroom as well. We also make sure that we're being patient with our students in terms of meeting them where they are and, of course, taking them where they need to be. We want to make sure that our classes kind of reach that high expectations, that we are offering challenging content, but we're also fair. And students tend to, students tend to recognize that, and we build this relationship of trust. Also, we kind of make sure that they're not looking at it so much as you're in here to get a grade. So there is also a relaxed atmosphere that we like to also make sure that the students are experiencing. In terms of impact, the overall impact, or overall purpose of what it is we're trying to do, we want to make sure that our students are able to kind of get jobs, that they're marketable. Also, we want to make sure that they are making significant improvements, okay? You're not just doing enough to pass a class, but you're also, you know, making those steps and taking the information you gain in this class and being able to utilize it in other classes as building blocks. And we also work really hard to make sure we use that warm language, that we encourage in terms of developing their confidence as students. Overall, when we look at what excites us, it is when students have that, of course, light bulb, aha moments. Also when they are able to take control of their education. I think I heard another group talk about when students are able to kind of question the material. A lot of times when classes aren't just you know, instruction or lecture driven, but students are actually taking control in their education. Debrief points. As far as commonalities, we know that we all care about our students' success. So outside of the classroom, that also means, are they able to provide a living for themselves and their families? So jobs and education is very important. Also, we want them to be awesome. I use that word a lot. We want them to be awesome, not just in the classroom, but also in the job market as well. A spirit of excellence. Also with debrief points, not only is Malcolm X a job training center, we talked about that. I know that a lot of students come here to get, you know, careers in nursing, healthcare fields, and a lot of times in the process, those general education courses kind of get pushed to the back. They just kind of look at it as something I must do to get to this particular point. And we really want to make sure that they have a value of education, because what they're learning in those general education classes will not only help them, you know, just to get a grade, but it will also help them to excel in their careers. As far as nurses, nurses have to learn how to, you know, in terms of writing reports, they have to learn how to communicate effectively on paper, you know, how to also express themselves. So we try to tie that in as well. Overall core values, we want to stress that education is both professional preparation and life development. Also, how do we get students to realize this? So we were talking about in terms of culture change. We want students to realize that it's not like you're coming here just to get a grade or just to get a certificate, but you're also coming here to learn skills that'll help to enrich your lives. How do we articulate our mission to students? In terms of culture change, I think it was brought up that a a lot of times the students kind of treat our classes, and for the most part within our group, we had math instructors, English instructors, history, I think African American studies. And a lot of times if students are here focused on getting their certificates in nursing or healthcare, then they kind of treat it like, oh, this is just something I have to kind of go through to get, you know, to where I want. So in terms of culture change, if we can, in every aspect of their experience here at Malcolm X, when they, you know, go through advising and financial aid and registration, even those classes that may not directly relate to, you know, their certificate or major, they're still taking those classes seriously. So in terms of culture change, just how we articulate it to our students. If we use the term that, you know, oh, I'm giving you this class just because it's a general education class, students tend to look at it the same way. You know, like, oh, I don't really have to take this so seriously. It's not anything that I really need. But we really want to make sure that we're articulating well to them. Each class you will encounter in this institution is in one way or another going to take you to a higher level. So that's our core values.
You get 2 for 1 today. And with that being said, this is one of the newest members of our college. And I remember her first week of work when her dean set up a meeting with me. To become familiar with the program I work, I told her, oh, if you ever need anything, don't hesitate. So we all decided at our table she was the newest member, so she should present. So then in the back of my mind, I was like, you know, I did kind of tell a little lie. If you ever need anything, just tell me, and I'll help you. So at the table, she said, I want you to come up and help. So cool. We're family, we'll co-present, right? So this will be a tag team effort. Much of what is written here was already shared with the best interest of time, and in an effort to present you with new information, we'll just go ahead and highlight and share with you things that haven't been spoken about already, okay? All right.
All right. So what brings us joy was the first thing that we went over, and just lots of similarities, mostly watching people grow, watching the students move on to transfer, do what they intended to do to be successful, completing their programs, so forth. Memorable moments. Various things were shared. When students come back to tell you about their success was something that really kind of touched people's hearts and was a special moment. Being recognized off campus as an advisor or as an instructor, and having students remember you and connect with you outside of the campus was special as well. And then in the classroom, it was mainly talking about sort of recognizing students as a whole, so not just as a student necessarily, but recognizing what else they're encountering outside of the classroom and taking that into account. So one of the members at our table had said in their class, they recognized that students would come in and weren't ready to be focused necessarily on the material because they were thinking about maybe they had an encounter with someone on the bus and they were feeling really uneasy about it, or something they saw on the news, or something going on with their family. And so taking a moment sometimes to just check in with people, see how things are going before diving into the material and the agenda for class. Impacted students' life. Let's see, I'm thinking out loud here. Assisting students in receiving a full, so accomplishments basically, assisted students in receiving a full ride to a four-year institution. This was from TRIO. And then kind of hearing back from students when they come back to tell you about what they've achieved, and then when they come back asking you questions, so kind of recognizing that you're building a trusting relationship with a student is really, was recognized as a positive thing. Excitement, motivation, just seeing a student get it and understand material or understand information was a big positive. And then there was a point in here that asked, how are we going to take this excitement to the new building? And so we briefly talked about kind of thinking about what really motivates us and keeping that in perspective. So with change comes anxiety, or sometimes there are bumps in the road, and so moving to a new building might make some people feel like, oh, I don't know what this is going to look like. So recognizing that the changes that are happening are in the interest of making services better for the students and creating more opportunities for the students. And so thinking about that and focusing on that instead of the anxiety, maybe. I don't know. Debriefing points. So we had a lot of things in common. Basically, a common investment in student success, common excitement for working directly with the students in different capacities, passion for work, caring about the whole student like we talked about before, being advocates, and then challenging and encouraging students to be their best. And then core values, accountability, recognizing the whole student, service, and compassion were a few that we discussed. Thank you.
So I just whispered to my colleague, we were initially going to take turns. She would do a page, I would do a page, but she got so excited and so into it, she went through the whole presentation. So round of applause for my colleague. Closing remarks from our team, my team, Wade, our team. I just want to share, we did all have some commonalities, but one that continuously resurfaced is sharing the excitement of being in the new building and what that entails and all the new programs. And just personally, I have the privilege of working with the high school students and doing presentations at different high schools. And unfortunately, throughout history, Malcolm X College has had a bad rep because we're an open admissions institution. People wait to the last minute to apply, but they know they can come here and we'll receive them.
Having students who exhibit a joy of learning. And this point came up not just because the teacher is creating that joy, but because the student is coming into the classroom already primed and ready to go. And so when we have students like that, and unfortunately that's far in between in some cases, that's a good feeling because now you have that energy and you're ready to run with them. Being approachable. I find that was one of the points that I brought up. I find that that's one of the most rewarding experiences that I have with my students because students are already intimidated by this process. They are already nervous, and if they are not students who have been in the process along the way and they've been 20 years out of school, that's very difficult for them. So when we make ourselves available to our students and we know that they are the priority, that makes them feel good, and they will continue to come to you. And so that's why I feel like that's one of my favorite rewards. Seeing students using services provided by the Wellness Center. We had one member in our group who is from the Wellness Center, and the idea that students are using those services, it's a rewarding experience because now we know that validates having those services. How many of you use that in your classes where you ask students to take advantage of those services? And they do. And so that's one of the things that we can continue to work together with the Wellness Center on. Walking a student down to the Wellness Center, this is very key. This individual said that she took the time to walk with the student to the Wellness Center because the student did not want to do it alone. And that little moment of connecting with that student was invaluable. And so when we extend ourselves to the point where we're really making them feel like they're valued, they will internalize this experience at Malcolm X College as one that they'll never forget. So we need to make an effort to do that. All right, seeing the joy of teaching translates into the department and institutional shifts in assessment. Oh, we started talking about assessment. And we thought, this is a kudos moment, we thought that, especially in the English department where we struggled for years, and I do mean years, in terms of having exit examinations and what that means to our students and how that can impact their stay here. Because if they can't pass an exit exam, they have to retake a class. That means a longer time before they can graduate. And so we fought to change that dynamic. And since we're on the scope of paradigm shifts, that was a paradigm shift, and it was one that was supported. Thank you. Feeling support and recognition from the that's the same thing. Knowing that I can't see. Knowing that students benefit from mentoring them. I don't know where that point came from. You guys can help me out on that one. Believing in and using skills to support the mission. That was something we found very valuable. If we believe in it and we support it, then we are, in effect, infusing that into the college atmosphere. We are, in effect, using that to have that dialogue with our students. If you believe in something strongly enough, it's going to come through. And so students recognize that. They know sincerity when they see it. And they know when you're just doing your job. And so we have to own what we believe in when we say we are a part of this culture. And then we had a few things that we thought about in terms of the vision of what we think Malcolm X College could look like. There has to be a willingness to adapt, to change. And the word adapt was really something we talked about. We didn't just say it. We thought about other words, but the word adapt was more appropriate. This is not an easy thing. What we are about to embark upon is not an easy thing because there are different mindsets. And even as we leave here today, we're going to see a lot of people who take this information in but still will hold true to what they already believe in. And that's the challenge. That's the hard place. And if we're going to have a successful transformation and transition, it's going to take some adapting to something that's new, something we haven't experienced before. Constructive engagement. This means that when we are doing what we're doing now, we are in effect doing that constructive engagement. We are working towards this goal of changing the paradigm. And I'm not an advertisement, I'm not a salesman, I just believe in this. And I believe that whatever there is a possibility for something good to be the end result, and it takes this change, it takes this butting up against our differences or our different mindsets, it's going to require that we do it in a constructive way. A repository of subject matter experts. We need to have that even beyond this campus. We have wonderful and intelligent people here. I believe that. I hold on to that because these are the people who have motivated me over the years. But that is not enough. We're going to continue to need to grow and develop, and professional development is just one of those things that we're going to need. Integration and visibility of general studies. I think some other group had mentioned this. This is so important. I'm a proponent of we have to have a foundation from where our education starts, and that's in our gen ed courses. We can't get away from it. But that's what's going to propel our students to success. And so we can't forget that. A civic and community engaged campus. Crystal, can you speak to that? Because I'm not sure how you...
the previous line item and what other groups have shared in terms of carrying Malcolm X's legacy to the new campus and thinking about the way that both our building spatially but also our student body continues to be connected to the surrounding community and not kind of separating from that vision.
Last one, I promise. I'm going to keep it so sweet. All right. So in our group, one thing that we talked about was galvanize. One thing that we talked about was a national movement. And what I mean by that is that as we're going over to this new building, consolidating all of our programs, we really reflected on why we came to Malcolm, what that means. So in our group, one thing that everyone said was student success. I think everyone has talked about student success in their groups, but in particular, retention, persistence, completion, and success. What that means is that we really want to make sure as faculty, staff, and for our students that we're really contributing to our students' in-class and out-of-class experience. So quickly, because we talked about a lot of these things already, our core values, and as we get ready for our accrediting body, the things that we talked about, and some of you all may already know these things, the leadership challenge, Are any of you all familiar with the Leadership Challenge? Okay, well, we're going to briefly talk about it real quick. So, enable others to act. So what that means is that as faculty, because I think our whole group are comprised of faculty with one staff member, we really want to enable our students, but we also want to enable ourselves as well. And why we came here, really building up our morale and making sure that we're coming here every day, doing our job to the best of our abilities, and also hitting different goals that we want to hit in our departments. Inspire to share a vision. What that means is that Malcolm's mission and vision statement, we really want to make sure we're living by that. We really want to make sure that as we read these pillars in the cafeteria, learning, diversity, community, communication, we really want to make sure we're inspiring those visions. Model the way. That's important. We should all model the way in everything that we do as we get ready to go over to the new building and with our consolidation of the new programs as well. I can't read Donna's handwriting. Encourage the heart. That's important. Encouraging the heart, that doesn't mean literally encouraging your heart, but that really means encouraging your students as faculty, encouraging one another in a department as well. And the last one, challenge the process. That's pretty much easy. It's simple. Challenge the process in things that you're doing. Challenge yourself to go above and beyond. Make sure you're doing the things that you need to do so you can become a better practitioner, as well as modeling our best practices as well. Thank you.
What they talked about, if any of you ever want to read further, is Kuzin Posner's The Leadership Challenge. Is a phenomenal read. And what's scary about it is it talks about some very simple concepts as identified that often we miss in challenging ourselves to be effective leaders. Wow. It's been a phenomenal day. Phenomenal dialogue. So I'm going to wrap it up, tell you what the next steps are very quickly, and ask the President to close us out. A lot of times when we do things like this, it is a one-time situation. We feel phenomenally good walking out of here, and then there's no follow-up. And follow-up to evoke change is critical. So, with that said, our next steps are, as I also say on the agenda, to get a smaller group that, and again, I'm kind of coining it, what Professor Essian and I were chatting about one day, the culture and climate team. I said, what should we call that? He said, VP, let's call it the culture and climate team. I said, well, I'll call it that for now and see what the rest of the group wants to do. We sent Byron sent a survey out to faculty to request times that were more conducive to your schedule, and it was really kind of all over the map. But there was 3 days of common time that I think will work for us. So what I see as the next step, the first next step, and I have sign-up sheets I'm going to put out here, and this is for anyone who wants to be a part of this group, that we meet at least 3 weeks out of a month, an hour, hour and a half, somewhere in that range, to design our next steps. I'm going to work towards encapsulating this information so we can have it transcribed and served as our guiding models. Again, I said earlier this morning that there have been, most of the departments have done SWOT analysis in terms of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in terms of where they see ourselves in current state. And the core values and commonalities and where we see as the vision for where we move is, it's really interesting because we all were literally on the same page. Now, how do we operationalize that? And that's going to be the opportunity to be a part of how do we begin to operationalize this change. So before you leave, please, I ask that for those that are interested in being a critical part of the change process to sign up, and we will continue moving in that direction. Some of the things that we will be looking at: how do we synthesize this information? What are the critical steps? And we have to take steps that are identifiable and measurable for us so that we know that we're on track. Some of the things that we will be looking at: how do we synthesize this information? What are the critical steps? And we have to take steps that are identifiable and measurable for us so that we know that we're on track. How do these steps support our accreditation process? Because in addition to this team, we will be assembling our HLC self-study team. I've also said to Professor West, it is time to very shortly get the curriculum team together to talk about how we can take working on curriculum to the next level, and we need our assessment team together. So we're going to have a lot of initiatives going, but then what's going to be a critical piece for this group together is to talk about how do we converge the work that people are doing into one initiative, because we will not continue silo focus. That cannot happen. How will we know we're on task? You know, we have to define the metrics. We have to define the feedback loops. How do we communicate? You know, I'm a communicative person. I know the faculty, you've received several emails from me already. Now, I don't know if you read them, but you've got them. But how do we communicate? As a sidebar, Alonzo and I talked about how do we begin to utilize SharePoint as a point of communication and a repository for information, particularly as we go through HLC. And we also have to look at when do we bring our new family members on board into the change. So today was phenomenal. Give yourself a round of applause again. But recognize the work is just beginning. I thank you. I appreciate you. I love you. And I'm grateful to be here, and I'm grateful for the excitement of today. Thank you.
Let's give Dr. Easley and yourselves a round of applause. We appreciate you, Dr. Easley, and your expertise. Today has been absolutely wonderful. I've heard the word awesome used, phenomenal, just, I would say even transformative. And so I want to thank each and every one of you for the time and effort that you put into the discussion that took place today. But I want to thank you in advance for the work that you will do to continue to support Malcolm X College and what we stand for. So with that, we're going to wrap up today by just simply saying, sign up, thank you, and have a great weekend.